Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. You are listening to a podcast by Pastor Eric Deepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. If you enjoy Faith Over Breakfast, we encourage you to rate it on the Apple Podcast app, on Spotify, or Google Play. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. I got it right this time.
Finally.
Yay! My name is Eric Deepen, and I am pastor of the Burn It Down Church, the Village.
Burn It Down cult,
as we will be talking about. And across from me is Andy, the one who's trying to protect you. Pastor of Mission Church, the Outpost.
The one who's trying to protect you.
From the Village.
I'm trying. We set up this little outpost for everybody who's been burned by the cult.
Oh, goodness.
So
Anyway,
Rod retired, and Rod is the co-pastor of the Village.
Yeah.
And has been, and he retired. And in his retirement, there was a lot of reflections about the church here. And their words like cult and burn it down came up, which is why we talk about that. It's not a cult.
And you can watch it on YouTube. Maybe I'll put a link.
Oh, yeah, there you go. You could, if you want to do that, or you can hear us talk about it. And so we talk about the Village and the ways it was a critique and actually rejected some of the formulations of church. Then we get into single people and what they can do and offer to the kingdom of God, how they could relate to other people in the church, and then reflect a little bit on what it was like for Eric to have an older pastor accept his vision, get behind it. So Look at that. Three great things in a short amount of time.
And I'm curious, we'll just do this live on air because I've gotten some comments about how fun this is. So will we be able to podcast next week?
I don't know. That's a long way away.
Well,
probably.
If we are, I would prefer it to be our last podcast of the year.
Okay.
If that's okay with you. And I noticed that you wrote an article on Advent for Tucson or something like that. And I thought it was interesting. And it would be an interesting kind of, hey, we're moving towards Christmas.
Great. So
let's talk about this article you wrote, and it'll give us a way of kind of pointing people towards Christmas in their city.
Well, let's do it.
All right, cool.
As far as I know, I'm in.
All right. As far as you know, you're in. Otherwise, it'll be me. I'll read just the article out loud on air.
You could just hit there's a kind of clunky audio version of the article. You can just play it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. That's better.
There you go.
All right. Hey. Hi, Andy.
Hey, what's up? Thanks for taking a picture. We haven't been. Well, I haven't been doing the Instagram.
You haven't been doing. I don't know how. I mean, I don't do Instagram yet.
Someday you can send me a picture.
I will send you a picture.
Yeah. Sorry, I haven't.
Hey,
I've had other things.
You get yourself in front of the mic, and that makes me happy.
Okay, we'll take what we can get, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm sure that was contributing to our vast listenership.
It is. It's vast.
Vast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing. I came to Rod's retirement, and there were a few beautiful themes about Rod, but there were some themes about you. And,
yes, there was.
And the Village.
Interestingly enough.
And you looked slightly uncomfortable, maybe hearing, maybe not.
Yeah, it wasn't. I just had to laugh. It was pretty.
You just looked uncomfortable. I'm not saying you were.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And just a lot of people saying, we were thinking maybe we'd do this church plant thing, and they were either really intrigued because Eric was going to tear the whole thing down and redo everything was going to be different, or they said, we were comfortable with Rod, but Eric was going to burn everything down, but we thought we'll try it for a year or two. So there were just a lot of themes of tear it down, burn it down, and then several times people said, I thought it was a cult. Yeah.
Yes, these were in particular the people who came as teenagers.
Yeah. So, Eric, what's it like to be
a cult leader?
Perceived as a cult leader who's burning and tearing it all down. Or you kind of like it, don't you?
Yeah, it's a nice identity.
Is it? Okay. Well,
yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about that. I want to talk about that.
I mean, it makes it hard to hang out with people who are my peers because they all think that I think whatever they're doing is bad.
That's what it is.
That was initially, anyway, what it felt like to me. But of course, perception is not necessarily reality.
Right.
But it is reality for people. I mean, you live in whatever your perception is.
Yeah. No, that's a thing. Well, yeah. Tell me about this. It was hard. It was what this is a legacy of 20 years or so.
20 years, yeah. I was 28 years old. I mean,
people also said, I should say, like, it's changed their lives.
Yes.
Yeah. Which
I think Jeff's quote was, Eric has changed us all.
Yeah.
To be.
Yeah. Not just it, but you, Eric.
Yeah. Well,
that was the quote. That was the quote.
God has certainly used me to help people in their lives. Well, I mean, I think I hit a point in the mid-90s, 1997, where I just got fed up with everything.
Okay, yeah, this is what I want to hear about. What got you to the point? What got you to the point where you just said, forget it. I don't care if I fit anymore. I don't care if we tear the whole thing down.
Tear it all down.
Burn it down. Get perceived as a cult.
Right. I mean,
I'm sure you didn't
the
say
cult part thing came later.
Okay.
In people's perception at first. I mean, well, there wasn't people to be in anything. I mean, I think a lot of it had to do with I started this journey. I mean, in a philosophical sense, I started reading a ton of postmodern philosophy, and then I started reading a lot of evangelicals who were wrestling with postmodern theology and philosophy, and I started to realize that I also kind of got in touch with this sense in me that I didn't have before, which was like, and I hate to do this, but I'm going to do it. Like last week we talked about Generation X, but at the time there was this uneasy, apathetic, frustrated, abandoned feeling that because I had a stable family at some level, I didn't experience all the time, but it was always itching in the back of my mind and experience in life.
Yeah.
And the more and more I tried to get into leadership in the church, and the more I was in the inside and looked around, I just was like, this is a club. This is a club that doesn't care.
Cult.
It is. It's a cult. It's a club, and we're practicing things that I think are dumb and shallow and meaningless.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. Hey, you have your cell phone out.
No, you gotta act natural.
Always gonna take my picture. Yeah. So I am not used to talking while people are photographing me.
It's over.
Okay. Whew. It's like getting your eyes examined. You never know if you're getting it right.
Yeah. Well, you didn't.
I didn't. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. I appreciate that. That was the beginnings of all of that. And I thought, well, if all the aspects in my mind are not good, I got to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. So I became very adamant, and people didn't like me. I mean, I didn't like that preaching. The way we preached was stupid. I thought the way we sang music was stupid. I thought the way we sat in pews was stupid. I thought the way we interacted with the community at large was pointless and stupid.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I'm using the word stupid a lot, but that's how I felt. I just was like, so in some ways, just burn it all down and let's start over.
Yeah.
With a different system. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
And the one thing I knew that people needed, both in and outside of the church, was relationship.
Yeah.
And the other, so that's one line. And the other reason to burn it all down is I kind of hit hard against the wall of high levels of sexual abuse inside the church and outside the church. And inside the church, no one's talking about it. Outside the church, nobody knows what to do with it. And
you're just talking, there probably a lot of different, but you've talked about just a lot of people, and that's part of their story. And no one's addressing that.
Mm-hmm. That's I mean, I think it's either right doctrine, was a big thing, or it is the behavior of the day, like that we're going to modify on Sunday, right? That we're going to try to fix for you so you can live your life a little bit better.
Yeah.
And none of it was addressing the soul. None of it was addressing the things that are deeper in people's lives.
Really shaping them into
Yes.
what they are,
Well, and I think
how they operate.
I think the problem is nobody wants to take the time to do it.
It's a lot of work.
And that's the burn it all down is, you know, you can only do a few things, and people's stories are the things that are important. So everything you do has to shape a more authentic, intimate experience with one another and with Jesus. And that, so, but the church doesn't, the reason it was tear it all down or burn it down is the structures don't help that at all.
Yeah, they don't.
None of the structures help that. And when I started engaging more postmodern philosophy and thinking through all of that, part of it is you have to say, I have a true story. I'm going to put this true story out here. I'm not going to tell you that it's truer than your story. I'm just going to say it's true, and I'm going to tell it. And everything I do, from what I sit in on a Sunday to the way I sing songs, the way I talk to you, the way I preach, to what we do during the week, every little detail matters.
Yeah.
And in a modern world where everybody takes from everyone else and no one has any originality to them, it's very difficult. I mean, that's why it looks like you're tearing it all down, because you're saying we're not borrowing. We may steal some ideas and some things, but we're not going to look like that. We're not going to take your templates.
Yeah.
And the church had a couple templates, and everybody did the same thing.
Yeah. So it still feels like that's.
Oh, it still is.
The case.
By and large, the village is still to tear it down.
Yeah.
And the village still stands as a critique.
Yeah.
Fortunately or unfortunately, nobody really wants to go down the full road. Some people want to go down the partial road, and I like that's great. But no one wants to go the full road. It's too much work.
Yeah.
It's too much work for me. I mean, it's hard.
Yeah.
But it has built an amazing, beautiful community and there's been deep, meaningful life change.
I think one of the things that you've done that I look up to, because I would say, if I looked at my church at Mission, I would say we have not gone as full into this by any stretch as you. And I think that one of the things that you've done is you've equipped your people to do this for each other, because it's a lot of work. But if it were on you, there'd be no way, just no way.
Yeah, no.
But you have now at this time around you a real community that does this.
Yeah.
To one another and to people who walk in who can go there.
Yeah.
And that took a long time, I'm sure.
It did, and part of that strategy came from a guy named Jordan. I don't know his last name anymore. This was before Facebook. He had this website, and this website was sort of the clearinghouse for everything for postmodern ministry and maybe evangelical missional ministry. Yeah. And he had a system. He had a thing he designed called the Cell Tower Ministry. Yeah. And the idea simply was, and I kind of modified it, but that the church on Sunday should demonstrate from top to bottom what you should be doing at your house. So the church becomes a broadcaster of a value system and a way of doing and a way of practice. And then your house becomes a broadcasting unit, and you're building broadcasting units all around so that, you can bounce off the towers so that everybody can get cell coverage in a sense. So everyone's getting that value thing. And so part of it is church for me on Sunday. That should, including the teaching, should be happening in your home, happening with people, happening with your kids, happening all of the creativity that you get to experience, the engagement, the conversation built around the table, the continual push of value systems and practices. They're supposed to be moved on then to the people's lives. Yeah. And they imitate that, but they do it in their own way, right? They're using their own creative energy to make that look well and be authentic to them. So I think part of it is for people when they tear it all down. Well, I mean, we did lots of different things with our preaching. We did a thing. I mean, one of my favorites was Rod and I, for I think probably 6 months to a year. I would preach for 10 minutes. Rod would preach for 10 minutes. While we were preaching, Russ and other leaders would take turns. They would be critiquing with a set of questions. Those questions then would be offered to the whole community to sit and chat about. Then they would be given to us, and we would respond without being prepared for them.
Yeah.
So we had this dialogue we were building. We used to preach together and argue with each other in front of everyone. We call it dueling pastors. So we've tried a lot of different ways, even just from the space. We still allow people to respond and engage after our sermons. To allow people, one, because I think when you don't do that, and I know it's hard in a big church to do this, but that's why I won't go there. But it allows the Holy Spirit to speak a little bit more broadly.
Yeah. Because
you're putting the word out there, but the Spirit's moving. He's touching people's hearts, and a lot of times we miss out on what he's saying if we don't give him some moments to speak within the community.
Yeah. We've tried that, and we haven't found, we aren't doing it now. I'm curious as I think about this. Our church is very different now, smaller than, well, bigger than it once was for me, but smaller than it once was in our merged reality.
Right.
And I wonder if we're actually more capable of it now.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things, so, I mean, this stuff, preaching and deconstruction of preaching came from Doug Padgett, but he emphasized something that just changed my life, and that is that the person who we all are most uncomfortable hearing speak, when we open it, that's the one that the Holy Spirit is speaking through. That part of the uncomfortability, even if we don't agree or they're saying weird stuff, the uncomfortability that we're feeling is a moment for the Spirit to work. And because you're giving power and voice to someone who doesn't usually have power and voice, and you're having to deal with your own uncomfortability. And so that's a powerful thing.
Well, one of the things I like about the ability for people to dialogue, after something's been shared, and it is uncomfortable and weird things can happen, which is the fear.
Right.
But that's life. You talk to people, it's uncomfortable and weird. So if we're trying to throw a really great event, then it's no good. But if you're trying to prepare people for life, it's actually an excellent opportunity to sort of model moving through an uncomfortable or weird moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so when you're talking about burning it down, like in the early days, I just had so many conversations about how preaching was done. People coming in who had church experience and they didn't like our worship music. And and even your church recently just put a post on about how you have the best worship band.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the best.
I was hoping to post, hey, the Village has the worst. So if you want to see the worst, come see the worst.
Yeah.
If
it's funny because that post, I actually didn't even think that much about it, but it was shaped partially by a conversation I had with Ray, one of our elders. And we had talked about how we are often embarrassed. We think our church is great, but we feel weird saying that. Mm-hmm. And we tend to even kind of downplay that. And we've noticed several times that people we've talked to they talk to us about our church and we go, it's great. There's some other really great churches. And they end up going to the other ones and we're sad about it. And it's like, well, yeah, but if you heard us talk, it sounded like we didn't believe in ours.
Right.
And it's just because we don't want to be braggadocious. But we were like, maybe we should actually tell people we think our church is great. And that's why we're there.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like your kid, you're like, my kid's the best. No, they're not. But to you they are.
Yeah.
Because it's your kid.
Well, and for me, that is what I was against.
Yeah.
And because I don't think the Village has the worst worship. I don't think there's a value in it. It's authentic to us.
Yeah.
Hopefully yours is authentic to you.
There's that.
I mean, I think that's really key because authenticity is missing in the church.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other part. And the story is missing. I mean, it's very hard. Like to have story. But if you go to the village, it is about a story. You can go to every single person, and when they came, they can tell you the events that happened and what shaped them, and the story of the church and where we were. It's a tribe, and it has a story, and all the people can tell the story, and they all tell it a lot differently because it's their experience of that story. My favorite, I would say half the village comes in and says their part of their story is I didn't like the music.
Yeah.
And then the end of their story is I can't go anywhere else anymore and listen to anyone else's music. Yeah. It's really hard for me. Yeah. Because it's not because the music changed or because they thought like it became a better quality. It became part of their story. Yeah. And it was written by people, and they participated in that in some level. Yeah. And so that's a big deal because you own it. And when you own it, it's like you meet that girl and you're like, I could never be around her. I could never date her. And then you marry her a year later and you're like, what happened there? But that's a lot how the village works. The cult part, it's weird when you get there. It's got candles, it's painted, there's art everywhere. People are intense.
In like camping intense?
They're camping, they're intense. And
yeah, they are intense. I shared at Rod's retirement about visiting once and meeting Rod, but that was an experience we had. Was people are coming up and just like going in like all the way, and you're like, whoa, hey, what's up? I just showed up. We were more open to it, I think.
Sure.
And but it was alarming. You hear from people at churches that they show up and don't feel welcome. At the village, you show up and feel overwhelmed. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
potentially.
Some people, I think sometimes that's the experience. Other times I feel like I get they don't feel welcome.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, you know each other deeply at the village, and that can feel very difficult to break into.
Yes, it can.
Yeah. And that's a challenge. Our church, just by the nature of its size, has some people who know each other really well, and they really look forward to seeing each other. And I really love that. But it's very hard to open that door to the person that walks in, that they get to enter into that. And I think that's really challenging for us. I think people who walk into our church feel, it depends. Actually, I've noticed some people who seem to be able to slide right in.
Right.
But there's others who, I think it's a real challenge.
Well, and I think for us, because we've trained our people, and I don't think they would say this, but this is where we've moved them, is that if you invite somebody to our church, then it's really easy for them to slide in because that person is a guide, and they will guide you around and get you into things and connected to people and part of the thing. If you show up, which is not actually a large way we grow the village, if you just showed up because you saw us on the website, though we do get website people, it's harder because you've got to come in and you don't have a link. And so someone in our church has to choose to be your link. Yeah. And I think that's when you're in a small church, sometimes, you come on so you come on a Sunday night and you're like, oh man, it's a smaller night and your friends are there and there's one new person. It's like, I'm just going to hang out with my friends. I haven't seen them in a while and catch up, see what's going on, or whatever it is. Sometimes it's hard to have that, I need to be engaged with that person over there or whatever. Yeah. So, no. I don't burn it all down. That was a new one. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
You wanted to talk about something else.
Well, I think it's connected to this because the other thing is I also I grew up in a family that was all about discipleship. I was always in streams of discipleship. And the thing that really caught me as a single person and then married and working with single people in the church is that single people, and Paul emphasizes this in Corinthians, have this opportunity and I think obligation to take their free time and apply it to the kingdom of God. Yeah. Because the only way I think the gospel goes out most powerfully through men and women who have space to go and be in the spaces, who aren't worried about putting their 2-year-old down. Yeah. They can stay out till 11, 12 at the bar, or they can be in the weekends wandering through their, connecting with people in their neighborhood, being in.
Absolutely. It's an opportune time.
It is an opportune time, and I think single people don't realize, especially who are followers of Jesus, that they have such a great calling and such a great opportunity.
Have you noticed that I've talked to, I would say, often younger and single people, probably true of older and single people too. And they will have a concept, they will believe that they are very busy. Mm-hmm. And I will remember being there and feeling busy.
Yes.
But then I know they're not busy. Comparatively, they're not. If you're up doing any kind of hobby late into the night on a fairly regular basis, if you're playing a video game on any form of regular basis, you're not busy, right? Like there's...
I agree.
Yeah. Anyway, and that's not to be totally critical, but I think there's a feeling of busyness that some of us who are, more engrossed need to go, hey, I know you feel busy. You do. And you are for you, but you're not. You can use that time. You have more capacity. You have more brain space. You just do.
Well, I mean, we know that all of us are like, on average, it's something like 4 hours a day watching TV.
Yeah.
So, you're busy playing video games and watching TV, and that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think,
and you're on YouTube, you're on social media.
You're I'm not saying. I just think, wow, as a single person, this is your opportunity. If you're kind of thinking, well, I don't know what to do in life.
I want to follow Jesus.
I want Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus is what you want to do in life, and if you want to have the greatest impact and develop a life where you have a knowledge of who God is and an experience of who God is, this is the moment to like build that foundation, to see God work in powerful ways. Because you can go to work, you can be tired, you can go home, meet with people, go hang out with people, be with people.
Yeah.
Even if you're introverted, 3 days a week.
Yeah.
Be with people. Open your house. Throw parties.
Yeah.
Go out to coffee with people who don't know Jesus. Go to concerts with me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Hang out.
Ask some questions.
Get to know the people in your neighborhood. Get to know the older people who need help. Be engaged. Yeah.
Because the people with families, they can do some of that, but it gets a lot harder. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things I used to tell single people in our church early on, because we had a lot of them, was pick a married couple in our church and who have kids and say, I'm here to serve you.
Ooh,
so once a week, I'm going to serve you. Whatever you need. You need me to come clean your house? I'll clean your house. You need me to watch your kids so you can go on a date? Go on a date.
Man,
I want to support your marriage.
Can I just say that's so opposite of what I even hear advised. I tend to hear people advise two young singles, find a married couple to learn from, meaning they will serve you. I've never heard somebody phrase it that way, find a married couple to serve.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, then I say to married couples, I say, hey, ask the single person after they've been in your life for a while to make some observations about your marriage.
Yeah.
Ask them to, because they're going to give you a completely different perspective than someone who's married.
Yeah.
They got nothing to protect, and they have a unique view of your family if they're serving you.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And I think it would end up being both ways, but
it happens. Yeah, well, a married couple who is getting free babysitting or getting their house cleaned by a single person feels so just blessed that all they want to do is pour out on that person and engage.
Do it. Yeah.
Yes, have them happen in their home all the time and serve them and care about them. And that's the cool part, because then if you are service oriented and ministry oriented, then you have this married couple who in their spaces can help you in your ministry, support you, engage with you when they can be there. It's a cool model. It's a cool way of being.
Yeah.
It's a nice system, I think, but
interesting. It's good.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. Very cool.
So
okay. So there's
all those things.
All the ways to burn it down.
Yeah. I'm sure there were more, but
oh yeah, there's more. There's definitely more. No, that's cool. Thanks. How are you all doing with what do you think it means? Here's a new for Rod to retire. Here's what I heard at his party was he's retiring, but the people don't really see it as really happening. Or or want it to happen. But also it was like, but you'll still be here and preach and sitting in your chair and doing all, it was like, and you'll still meet with me. And it felt like it was a symbolic retirement.
Yeah. He's been pretty absent, so I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
I think you heard people's longing.
Yeah. And maybe that was it.
I mean, Rod seems to have confined himself to the evening service. I don't know if he'll bounce back and forth between the two.
Yeah.
It seems like the evening is the easiest for him.
Yeah.
Allows him to have some freedom in the mornings. So I think there's that. I mean,
if you're at the evening service, you have one experience of Rod. If you're at the morning service, not so much.
Right. Well, I also think that, I mean, he's not going to stop praying for the village. It's his church.
Yeah.
He's now the expectation on him is still to bring his spiritual gifts to bear on the church, right?
Yeah.
You don't retire and then you're like, my spiritual gifts aren't needed anymore. The other thing is he's kind of dug himself in a hole in that he always said, once an elder, always an elder. So that's, he's not gonna be able to get away from that. Like, I'm just the guy in the...
Yeah.
I think the big thing is the church will be encouraged to see him as someone who needs care and in a different way.
Yeah.
Not in the, we honored you as our pastor and serve you, but you're actually a different part now in our community and we care about you in that context.
Yeah.
So I think that's there. I think, the DNA of Rod's not going anywhere. And the other thing is, you may have kind of heard with some people, and they tried hard to separate Rod and I so that it was about Rod, but others struggled to do that. And that's because, all the things that they talked about from Rod are things that Rod and I either did together or we talked about or we engaged in, together. So,
if I could just say, I was very jealous of your having an older pastor who adopted your vision.
Yeah, it was a blessing.
Like hearing that story, I was like, and by jealous, I mean not like sitting there going, but kind of going, amazing. What would that be like? Because people were talking about all your crazy ideas, but then Rod was there, and he was felt more experienced or even traditional in a sense, and that made it feel a little more safe.
Yes.
And I honestly did think, I thought, wow, what if we'd had that? Wonder what that would have been like. So what was that like? How important was that, do you think, for the village?
Well, I think I always say Rod brought three things.
Yeah.
Two really good and one that was always frustrating to me. One is that he had a lot of connections, not just in the CRC, but in other spaces.
Absolutely.
Which actually financed a lot of the village.
Yeah.
So that was beautiful. He just brought something I would never be able to bring.
Totally. And connections, but he had this long-standing history and legitimacy in people's minds. And even just the way he speaks of things, he's very calm and confident.
Yes, calm and confident. I think the other thing that was really good about Rod is that what you said is that he had decided that he needed to put himself on the back burner and empower me, because partly it was things he was honest enough to say the things I've tried and the way I think things should be aren't working, and I need to empower someone who is working.
How rare.
Right? So I need to throw them all my weight behind that. Yeah. And he let me be. He became a sounding board, a venting space. Like I could just be really frustrated and upset, and he still allows me to do that. Like I can vent about anybody or anything, and it stays safe with him, and he calmed things down and was good in certain crises, and so he was that legitimacy, all of that. The funny thing about Ron, and you've heard it from Ron, and Michael said that he would have gone up and said it if Ron hadn't said it, is that a lot of the village things that we were like, everybody's practicing, Ron's like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And in some ways he got away with it because he was older.
Yeah.
And everyone was a little afraid to challenge him
Yeah.
on it. So sometimes that was very frustrating
Uh-huh.
because he would empower me and he would do all this and he would really...
And then he would defy the model.
Then he would defy the model, whatever model it was. So, and that's, endearing and frustrating.
Yeah.
But that's kind of his character. And I think what he brought is he brought a really intense prayer life to the church. And mind you, like, I think it's funny, like, that prayer life included me, and I also had a very strong prayer life, but he talked about it where I didn't. And I was laughing. My wife and I were talking after this, and we're saying, oh yeah, like our prayer lives and the way we kind of have a spiritual relationship with God, that's not ever been our practice to then put that forward.
Yeah.
Like the other parts of our spiritual life I put forward, but that one, no. That's kind of, always in some ways been very private to me. And so, but he's always put it out there. Everyone knows about his prayer tub. Everyone has experienced him praying. And also he's this gift. Yeah. So there's the seeing that he has in his praying for people. So yeah, I think it was really, as a young person, I think the other thing is, like, a lot of young pastors, at least in my experience, have a father hole in their life and really long for an older person to come alongside them and to be fatherly. Sure. I did not have that hole. Yeah. So for me, it was a coworker who gave me legitimacy. Yeah. And didn't try to force his ideas, which was pretty powerful.
Do you think not having the hole made it possible to some degree? Like, you weren't in need as much? Like, you weren't looking for a dad, so you could have that? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yes.
How important was that?
Well, maybe people have listened to the podcast long enough to know that I did have some of that hole, and I went out trying to fix it, in other people, and was really hurt. And so by the time I got to Rod, I had worked through some of my, like, demand that older men fill a hole that my father didn't. Yeah. So by the time I got to Rod, I was able to accept some of it. It took a process because I clearly told him when we first decided to work together, you're not going to be my mentor. You're not going to be my dad. I don't want that. Yeah.
Do you think that, I guess what I'm saying is, do you think that actually freed him up to do what he did?
I think so because it didn't put the burden on him. Yeah. And I think at the time, he was my age that I'm now, 49, 50, and he lost his father when he was 13. And so being a father was kind of a call that God gave him in the village to father a lot of people without dads. So you heard that was another thing. You were like a grandpa. You were like a father. Yeah. And he preached his last sermon for the year and probably for at least another year. And so we gave people an opportunity who weren't going to be a thing to say things. And that was a big theme, like your stability, you always being here, always being available to talk to, being gentle, kind, thoughtful, listening. Yeah. That was a big deal for our church. So God kind of shaped him into a father, of which I think then now a lot of young men outside of the village who are pastors are getting to experience what the village shaped in him. Yeah. So, yeah, he's a pretty cool guy.
Yeah. Well, it's probably time for me to go somewhere.
Yeah, you got me talking.
So I like that.
That's good.
Those are my favorite. So there you go. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com. If you have anything on your mind that Eric could talk about, you can email that email and we'll do it. And rating us is cool. We like it. The higher the better. Sending us money is an option.
We like it in denominations of 100.
Yeah,
maybe even 1,000 would be nice.
Oh yeah, and I just wanted you to know that that's possible.
It is possible.
Not everybody knows that, and so if you're thinking to yourself at the end of the year,
I'd like
what do I do with this money?
What do I do with my $10 million?
We'll take some. Yeah, we'll put it to use. We'll improve something or. Yeah, or just, I don't know, how many years have we done this for nothing? I don't know.
For free.
If you could, if you wanted, on the check, put just to support the podcasters. I love these guys. That's an option.
A gift.
A potential path you could take.
Right.
Just say that.
And we're not doing the PBS thing, so we don't.
No, we're not on PBS. We're not part of the system.
Yeah, we're not. You don't need to support us for on the air for a whole month like it costs.
No subscriptions here.
No, nothing.
No pledge.
No wall to be behind.
Just freedom to give.
I don't think I've ever given that long of a giving talk.
No, me either. Anyway, let's move on.
Right.
Thanks for tuning in.
Okay. You've been listening to Faith Over Breakfast with Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. Please share us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you.